In the final video of our series about battles between animals of different eras, we'll talk about the Cenozoic Era. Since it began relatively recently and has not ended to this day, we won't devote a separate video to each of its periods. After the extinction of the dinosaurs, many interesting events happened in the animal world of our planet. But today, we'll dwell in more detail only on the most significant confrontations of this new round of the evolutionary arms race. By subscribing to the Age of Dinosaurs channel, you'll be the first to know when we release new videos. Also, with the help of your likes and comments, we can expand our channel and reach more viewers in the science community. The Cenozoic Era began immediately after the end of the Dinosaur Era. Today, it's divided into three periods: Paleogene, Neogene, and Anthropogenic. In each of them, various climatic and geological changes occurred, and also a wide variety of animal and plant species appeared and disappeared. Let's try to briefly talk about all of them in order. The Paleogene lasted from 66 to 23 million years ago and consisted of three epochs: the Paleocene, Oligocene, and Miocene. All this time, the continents continued to move apart. This contributed to the emergence of the Atlantic Ocean. The disintegration of Gondwana and Laurasia by the end of the period made it impossible for living beings to migrate between the continents. After this, the evolution of life in different parts of the planet went its own way for a long time. Almost throughout the entire period, the climate throughout the Earth was warm and humid, but closer to its end, a sharp cooling began. This was especially noticeable in the polar zones. Large accumulations of ice floated in the North Sea, and Antarctica gradually became covered with a solid ice shell. In the Paleogene, green moisture-loving plants grew not only at the equator and in the tropics. They could be found at the latitudes of the modern southern Urals, Kazakhstan, the Caucasus, and Central Europe. At the same time, tree ferns grew mixed with sandalwood, palms, and bananas. Closer to the polar zones, one could find trees typical of today's temperate zones: oaks, myrtles, chestnuts, and cypresses. At the poles themselves, coniferous broadleaf deciduous forest prevailed. After the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, the animal world of the early Cenozoic was not very diverse. The vacated ecological niches were gradually filled by new animals. This happened in all three inhabited elements: in water, air, and on land. And by the end of the Paleogene, the most adaptable creatures were birds and mammals. Moreover, at this time, mammals were already actively exploring the seas and oceans. These were the first varieties of sirens, whales, and dolphins. In the middle of the Paleogene, mammals exploring the water space achieved serious success. The terror of all sea creatures was the huge-toothed whales, basilosaurs. The length of basilosaur males could reach 21 meters, and females 18 meters. The elongation of their skeleton occurred due to the increase in vertebrae. At the same time, basilosaurs still retained rudimentary hind limbs up to 60 centimeters long. They had not yet acquired the form of full-fledged flippers or fins. Also, unlike modern toothed whales, they did not have echolocation devices. The relatively small skulls of basilosaurs simply did not have enough space to accommodate them. Their rivals were sharks and other cartilaginous fish that survived the extinction. The most famous sharks that appeared at this time were Striatolamia, Icerolamna, and Paleohypodotus. The genus Striatolamia includes 3 fossil shark species. They grew no more than 3.5 meters in length. Their fossilized teeth and vertebrae are found all over the world. These cartilaginous fish lived in water with low salinity. Scientists include 3 and sometimes 4 genera of extinct mackerel sharks in the genus Icerolamna. Their remains are found both in Europe and Africa, and in Kazakhstan and North America. Paleohypodotus, whose name translates as ancient small-toothed, was discovered almost by accident. A box of teeth was found in one of the U.S. museums, which were collected in the state of Alabama more than 100 years ago. Paleontologist June Ebersole immediately realized that they belonged to a new species of fossil sharks. Moreover, the age of the teeth was approximately 65 million years. Based on this, scientists suggested that these sharks became the main predators of the period of filling the ocean with new life after the end of the dinosaur era. Of the amphibians, frogs, toads, and some species of giant salamanders survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction. Reptiles at the beginning of the Paleogene were represented by a few lizards, snakes, turtles, and crocodiles. Land mammals mainly spread in forests and along the banks of reservoirs. At the very beginning of the Paleogene, they were very small. Closer to the middle of the period, they began to divide into predators: proboscideans, ungulates, primates, rodents, and others. Thanks to the separation of the continents, unique creatures lived in different parts of the Earth for a long time. In Australia, marsupials have survived to this day, and in South America, edentates and the first primates appeared. Towards the end of the Paleogene period, giant odd-toed ungulates appeared, brontotheres. These were rhinoceros-like herbivores up to 2.5 meters tall. They lived mainly in North America. In the Old World, their relatives, embolotheres, lived. Later, they were replaced by the so-called indracotery fauna. Indracoteries were the largest land mammals in the history of the Earth. They grew to almost 5 meters and weighed about 24 tons. There were practically no predators on land that could attack such giants. Therefore, the main fights between land animals occurred in lighter weights. Oddly enough, birds were the terror of ungulates and rodents at that time. But these birds were flightless and ostrich-like, and at the same time, carnivorous creatures. In Europe, Asia, and later in North America, these were gastornis. In Central and South America, Purusarhacids. Some species of these birds grew to be over 2 meters long. They ran fast enough and could stun or kill their prey with one blow. Among mammals, the most common predators were representatives of the creodont order. Their remains have been found on all continents except Australia and Antarctica. But among modern animals, scientists have not been able to find a single descendant of the creodonts. This order includes 2 families, comprising a total of 80 genera. There's an assumption that in their ecological niche, they were the dominant predators. The largest of them were up to 2 meters long. They were quite primitive animals. The first researchers who described these animals doubted whether to classify them as placentals or marsupials. They were also distinguished by the unique structure of their jaws. Scientists assume that creodonts could not chew food. Their jaws worked approximately the same way as those of modern crocodiles. They could bite their prey in half, but were not able to completely gnaw it. The Neogene period began just over 23 million years ago. Scientists divided into 2 sections, Miocene and Pliocene. During this period, the American continents further moved away from Eurasia. Several faults occurred in northeastern Africa, due to which the Red Sea and the Arabian Peninsula appeared. South America, in the process of its movement, encountered the Nazca tectonic plate. As a result, the Andes were formed. The Himalayas, Cordilleras, mountain ranges of the Crimea, Pyrenees, and other regions also formed in the Neogene. In general, the climate on the planet continued to remain relatively warm, but continued to gradually become colder. During the summer, the ice in the northern seas didn't have time to melt completely. As a result, the North Pole was covered with a multi-meter ice sheet. By the end of the period, the climate acquired pronounced continental features, and at the end of the Neogene, another sharp cold snap occurred. Such climatic changes led to a gradual decrease in the area of forests on all continents. In the northern latitudes, real winters were already raging, and in the equatorial belt, evergreen broad-leaved forests grew. Coniferous trees spread in the temperate and northern latitudes, but in many regions, chestnuts, sequoias, and other more heat-loving plants took root. Another cold snap closer to the end of the period led to the formation of tundra in Europe and North America. Deserts and semi-deserts also formed in tropical regions. The emergence of vast grassy plains led to another round of evolution of ungulates. In the first half of the period, representatives of the so-called Hipparian fauna dominated. Hipparians are the ancestors of modern horses. They were much smaller and differed in structure. It was these animals that were frequent victims of terrible birds, Gastornis and Phorusrhacids. Also at this time, giraffes appeared, who are the ancestors of modern camels and deer. Also in this period, the first participants in one of the main confrontations of the entire era appeared, mammoths and saber-toothed cats. But the main stages of this confrontation occurred in the next period, the Anthropogenic. But the marine fauna of the Neogene boasted a real super predator, the Megalodon. This giant shark, according to various estimates, grew up to 15 meters in length and weighed from between 35 to 47 tons. It's very difficult to accurately determine its dimensions. Since Megalodon, like all other sharks, was a cartilaginous fish, mostly jaws and rare vertebrae have been preserved. To obtain data on the appearance and habits of this shark, scientists simply proportionally increase the modern white shark. The Quaternary period, or Anthropogene, is named that way because of the appearance of modern man in it. The first hominids began to develop the savannas and walk on two legs much earlier, but man was able to seriously compete with other living creatures relatively recently. The Anthropogene period began a little more than 2.5 million years ago and continues to this day. Most of the period is occupied by the Pleistocene section. It ended only 11,000 years ago, giving way to the Holocene. By the beginning of the Anthropogene, the continents had already occupied their modern positions. In the Quaternary period, the formation of various mountain ranges and other geological features of the planet continued. Due to the periodic advance and retreat of glaciers, the level of the world ocean fluctuated within 100 meters. These processes helped form many northern islands and archipelagos. During the coldest stages of the Ice Age, a layer of ice and snow covered most of Europe, Siberia, and the North American continent. The current Ice Age is now in the stage of another warming. According to scientists, it began about 10 to 15,000 years ago. The next global cooling should begin no later than in 1,000 years. Such temperature swings greatly affected the change in the flora. The constant temperature fluctuations had a particularly strong effect on the changes in the flora of the temperate and polar zones. With the retreat of another glacier from the south to the north, stripes of taiga, steppe, and tundra vegetation appeared. More heat-loving plants once again began to grow in more northern regions. Natural barriers, such as mountain ranges, formed unique islands of southern vegetation in some areas of Europe, Asia, and North America. They can now be clearly seen in certain parts of the Mediterranean basin. In the seas, battles for the title of main predators between sharks and cetaceans continued. Relatively recently, basilosaurs yielded the palm to giant sharks, such as Megalodon. In the Quaternary, whales responded by introducing predators such as killer whales. These toothed whales are not only fast and strong, but also highly intelligent. The airspace was eventually left to the birds. In our issues, we've repeatedly talked about giant eagles and the ancestors of modern condors. These predators and their descendants pose a danger not only to other birds, but also to many creatures that walk on the ground, rodents and small ungulates. Throughout the period, various ungulates tried to resist a large number of new successful predators. The terrible birds gradually died out under the onslaught of more advanced competitors, predatory mammals. Various bears, wolves, and most importantly, cats appeared in all regions of the planet. All of them, including the famous saber-toothed cats, successfully hunted horses, bison, and deer. Only in South America could birds and reptiles feel like the main predators for some time. The fauna of Australia and the islands in the Pacific Ocean also developed in its own way. There, snakes, monitor lizards, and even arthropods still pose the greatest danger to all living things. But in the rest of the world, ungulates had to grow horns and learn to run fast. But each of them had their own opponents among carnivores. Wolves began to hunt deer, bears, wild boars, and even elks. and saber-toothed cats, bison, woolly rhinoceroses, and mammoths. Several tens of thousands of years ago, a new player entered the natural arms race: people. Their weapons were not fangs or horns, nor claws or hooves. People turned out to be smarter than animals. They learned to use tools and traps, as well as communicate productively with each other. The Pleistocene fauna didn't have a single chance. Mountains of bones of various animals surrounded the sites of ancient people. Their homes and clothes were made of animal skins, jewelry from teeth, claws, and feathers. People ate almost everything alive they could reach. In combination with abrupt climate changes, this led to the extinction of a huge number of living creatures all over the planet. People in the struggle for a place in the sun actively fought among themselves. First, the Cro-Magnons destroyed their main competitors, the Neanderthals. Then they began to divide into tribes and states, continuing to kill each other for resources and land. Now, battles between different species of animals continue on all continents. Lions, tigers, leopards, wolves, and bears hunt zebras, buffaloes, antelopes, and deer. Sharks and killer whales attack fish, whales, and each other. Eagles, condors, and owls attack rodents, lizards, and snakes. But all these fights seem frivolous in comparison to the global confrontation between man and nature. People don't only just destroy animals, they actively destroy or rebuild the entire world around them. At the same time, it's unlikely that humanity will be able to successfully resist the global forces of nature in the form of the greenhouse effect and the subsequent onset of another ice age. Without realizing it, people only accelerate these processes with their activities. As a result, it may happen that humanity will help nature in the destruction of our civilization, and life on Earth, forgetting about people, will continue its eternal struggle between different species of living creatures for survival and supremacy in the water, air, and on land. We thank everyone who watched our video all the way to the very end. If you're interested in this topic, we advise you to pay attention to previous videos on our channel dedicated to the Permian period and the era of dinosaurs. Our channel also has videos about the evolution of a wide variety of living organisms from different periods of life on Earth. There's also videos about the development of humanity and the relationship between people and wildlife. Thanks for watching.